Okay, so off we go. So yes, thanks Brooke, and thanks everyone for joining us today on our Purge and Archive webinar. And also just quickly want to take this opportunity to thank our partner GSI for hosting this session. We're very appreciative of the time and effort and the relationship that we have with GSI. It's a very positive one. Something I'm going to come on to a little bit more as we go through. So a little bit about us. So Klik IT, we're a supplier of services and complementary products for JD Edwards World and Enterprise One. We started off life as a consultancy back quite some time ago, but since 2003 we have specialized more in complementary products and specifically in data and environment management. So whilst we still do some consultancy, we still do some consultancy for existing clients in the world arena as well. But our main thrust as a business now is definitely moving on to data management products, which what we're going to see here today is our Purge-it, Purge and Archive solution. This is our 25th year in business. So we started in 1998, something that we're really excited about. And it's quite a long time now. Can't quite believe it's that long. I've been with the company since we started. We are and have always been 100% JD Edwards. It's all we do. It's all we've ever done. All our full-time consultants and product team have bags of years of JDE experience, all of which we use to deliver good results to our clients. Purge-it as a product has been available since 2003, went through the OVI process in 2004, or Oracle partnership in 2004. OVI came slightly after that. We have over 300 customers worldwide on 6 continents. So over the last 25 years in business and close to that 20 years, or close to 20 years with Purge-it, we've established ourselves as quite an important company in this arena. Also, as I said, I just want to highlight at this point what a strong relationship we have with GSI. Worked with Steve Pollock in service delivery. He's put together a great team to implement Purge-it for you. So they're a good go-to partner for Purge-it implementations. They've got a very strong team. From time to time, we get involved to help support their implementations, but pretty much they're off and running on their own with these things. And then quick brief agenda for today's meeting. I've just done the Klik IT introduction, so we've got past that bit already. Basically, I want to cover off on 3 things. First of all, why Purge and Archive? I think it's good at this point just to go back and just look at some of the drivers for it. It's very useful to understand what they are. They've changed a little bit over the years, but they're still fundamentally, a lot of them are still fundamentally the same things that we see from one client to the next. Then in relation to Purge and archiving, we have our product Purge-it, which makes it very easy to do. And so I just want to touch on exactly what Purge-it is and how it works, and then we'll have a live demonstration, and that's because of the time limitations. That's going to be really quite short, just a quick show of a few screens, and so you can just get a feel for what the product is and how good and easy it is to implement as a solution. And then, as Brooke mentioned, we'll have the Q&A afterwards. Quite a lot to get through, so I'm going to power on through it, and if you've got any questions, we can deal with those at the end. So first of all, we're going to look at some of the triggers for needing to archive JD Edwards. I've put this down here as traditional reasons. It's fair to say that over the years, reasons have changed. We have what we call our older, more traditional reasons. And with the advent of cheaper and quicker systems and disks, some people think that performance and space requirements are no longer reasons to archive data in your JD Edwards system. But to be fair, from what we see from clients, no matter how you look at it, you can't really get away from it unless you're a very small user of JD Edwards. Database size and system performance do matter, and they have a contributing, database size obviously has a contributing effect on performance and cost. We have many clients who are archiving data because their database is becoming out of control. They know they need to do something proactively about it rather than just adding more disk and adding more processor. And it doesn't need to be a time-consuming or costly exercise. And with the advent of items such as media objects moving into the database with the later releases of JD Edwards, the size certainly when you're adding on media objects and things can become extremely large. Archiving end of life or redundant data will reduce the size of the database as well, resulting in far-reaching significant business benefits. Reports will run faster. We've got plenty of examples in case studies on our websites, and we're just going through one at the moment with improvements on reporting runtime, quicker responses on systems, and users will always appreciate extra performance, and it will improve their productivity. Moving on from that, if you're planning on upgrading, as with the journey to the cloud, it's also fair to say that upgrades, or whether they're on premise or in the cloud, will be faster and easier if you have less data in your JD Edwards system. Time it takes to run an upgrade process will be directly impacted by the volume of data held in the JD Edwards system. So therefore, it's obvious really that more data is going to be a longer upgrade, and in speeding up an upgrade is an important reason to archive. But once the upgrade is completed, then what? I mean, I think personally the case for archiving before an upgrade is about as much more than just the time it takes to perform the upgrade. It's also about using the opportunity to improve your system data quality and taking that forward into your new upgraded system. So it's a good opportunity to tidy things up. Once again, why would you go through an upgrade process with 20-plus-year-old data? Because some of our customers have 20 more years data in their JD Edwards system that has no real business benefit. Moving on from that as well, it also improves housekeeping tasks. You can achieve better benefits from quicker backups, faster restore times if you ever had to go through a restore situation, recovery situation, which has happened to some of our clients as well. There's also an improvement on managing your test environment data with easier refreshes when environments are smaller, improving the ability to refresh test environments and having more up-to-date quality data in your test environments will also have a knock-on effect of improving your developments and the quality and the testing of them. So there's benefits all around by having good quality data on a smaller data footprint. As I said, they what I would call more traditional reasons, but we see more what we call more modern reasons now. First one that we see quite a lot of is journey to the cloud. It's probably self-evident, but with a larger data footprint you have, then the higher the cost will be if you decide to move your JD Edwards system to the cloud. The more data you have, the higher the storage costs, the longer the migration time, and the bigger overhead when you get to the cloud. So if you've been running JD Edwards for 5, 10, 15, or 20 years plus, why would you pay extra money to store 20-year-old, say, sales orders or works orders that have no value to your business? So whether you intend to move to the cloud soon or it's something that's on your roadmap for the future, reducing the amount and size of your data will have a significant impact on this task. So don't wait until just before you're about to move, when time may be tight. Put procedures in place now to start managing your data and get it under control. Next on, this is security. This is something that we see quite a lot of now as well, is security of data and compliance. I've mentioned audit and subpoena as well. The area of security and liability and compliance is relatively new to us in the purge and archive arena. Historically, people considered this more around access to data and would look at tools typically targeting user access, user security, roles responsibility. But the conversation has moved on slightly and now has broadened to this idea where people are looking not just at the security around the data, but the actual reason to keep the data they hold on their JD Edwards system. Holding on to too much data can be seen as putting your organization at risk. For years, the approach a lot of companies have around data is to try to keep as much as they can because they saw it as valuable and almost to hoard it. But it's seen. But if data is not useful to you operationally or required to be held legally, then you should really consider completely removing it. Reducing your company's data footprint can lessen your exposure and minimize your risk. And the potential risks associated with holding too much data can include things like higher compensation claims and fines if for any reason you have a data security breach. So it can be quite a significant thing. If you have audit checks or potentially legal subpoenas of data, then the costs associated with this will be lower if you're holding less data. And I should point out this point, we are not talking about removing data that you should legally keep. We're talking about removing data that you have no legal requirement to hold on your system. So this is areas that companies are more interested in coming to talk to us about now, the reasons for removing data from their JD Edwards system. And finally on that, having less data reduces the impact of data on your system, makes it run better, it reduces the impact of maintenance and staff, and it just allows your staff to get on with delivering more value add functions if they're not constantly firefighting in looking after the system because database size has become too large. So it just makes good sense. So what is Purge-it now? So we've looked at maybe some of the drivers. What we're going to talk about now is our solution for archiving JD Edwards, Purge-it. So what is Purge-it? Purge-it is the only archiving solution specifically designed for JD Edwards, written 100% within the JD Edwards toolset. And we do that using our own partner reserve system code. So we've gone through the Oracle validated integration program with Oracle. They've assigned us system code, so all the software is developed within those system codes. So installing it is like installing an ASU. It's installed straight into your JD Edwards system. Implementing it is like implementing another module in JD Edwards. It's super easy to get up to speed with because you're just learning something new within JD Edwards. You're not learning a third-party product as such. It's just like learning a new module. So it's very easy to learn, and it's very easy to retain that knowledge as well. So what we find is we have a high retention of customers using the product, not just once, but using it continually year on year. Being built within the tool set, there's many great features as well, which we'll come on to, but things like being able to put the jobs onto the scheduler and things like that. So it makes it very powerful and easy to implement product. So within the software itself, we have 8 what we call standard modules. Those standard modules cover the main application areas within JD Edwards. Those standard modules will archive data, so they will move the data from one database location, maybe something like business data prod, to something like archive data prod, from where full access to that data can be maintained. Those standard modules are very easy to use. Typically for most of our clients, they cover probably around about 80% of their database. So it's really the high voluminous areas that we're talking about here. And with those standard modules, we come on and we see this, but they're a program solution. So this Purge-it isn't like an SQL type tool. It's like a programmed solution. So you don't need to be technical to be able to configure and to run them. It's very easy for maybe a super business analyst type user to be able to be running this software. And then beyond our custom modules, as I said, typically most customers, the standard modules cover 80% of the data, but we do also have what we call a custom module, and that custom module allows you to target anything else, things like EDI, any of your own custom tables, things like address books, Z tables, media objects, the world's your oyster. Anything that's built defined within JD Edwards as a table can be accessed and archived using our custom module, using the most flexible options possible. So at the heart of Purge-it is is a standard module archiving, what I'm calling it an engine. So for each of our main modules, the process gives you the following features. So we have flexible data selection. Basically, when you submit the jobs, you can data select on anything within the driving component of the archiving routine. So you can set by company. You're obviously going to select by dates. Different document types. So it's very flexible data selection. We have what we call transaction level processing. What we mean by that is that when the processes run, they work at a order, document, or transactional level. So we we process things functionally. So we process a sales order at a time, and we take all the data across all the tables for an individual sales order, and then we move on to the next sales order. We take all the data out for that across all the tables for that sales order, and then move on to the next. So we're not processing table at a time. We're not doing all the sales order headers first and then all the sales order lines. We're doing all the tables for a sales order. And why is this important? It's important because if you stop the job halfway through, you have no part archived orders, no part summarized general ledger. That's all fully complete up to the point you stop it. So there's a lot of safety and security around that. There's a whole host of validation that's performed on the data as it runs. A lot of the validation is process and option driven, so you can choose which validations you want switched on and which validations you want switched off. So validations, we'll see those, but the sorts of things are to check that maybe transactions are posted, maybe sales orders are at the final statuses according to the order activity rules. For a GL transaction, if it's related to accounts receivable, has the accounts receivable batch already been purged and archived, and therefore we validate that to make sure we protect the AR to GL integrity. So there's validations at an individual document level, but there's also validations at a modular level as well that check to other modular areas to make sure that we're only removing data that should effectively be eligible for removal. And out of the process, we also get a full audit history of everything that's done. So we get a listing of all the archived transactions, but we also get a listing of all the things that couldn't be archived and the functional or application reasons why that data can't be archived. So there's a lot of information there. When we no longer require the audit, we have the ability to remove the audit information once it's no longer required. But we have a full audit of everything that's done on the system if ever it's needed for audit or history checking reasons. We use commitment control within the software, or otherwise known as transaction processing, effectively to protect data boundaries. So within the software, we consider like a sales order as a data boundary. We process a complete sales order, and then we use commitment control to update the database with that. So if for any reason the job was ended abnormally halfway through, maybe the subsystem was brought down or something like that, then you know that you're not going to have a part purge sales order because the commitment control would make sure that it would just roll back to the last fully successfully committed sales order. So there's a lot of protection there for data. Nice feature is we have the ability to reverse any of our archiving activities. So when you run an archiving job, you could reverse the whole job if you wanted. You could reverse a complete sales order job. And also, if you wanted to, you could reverse just an individual component of it. So you could reverse an individual sales order. The reversal process isn't just a case of running the archiving process backwards. It's not just a case of just swapping over the from and to location. There's a lot more goes on it than that. If we take something like general ledger, for example, when you've been processing a general ledger archive, you would have also created summary transactions. When we reverse general ledger, we also need to unsummarize what's happened. So the reversal also takes account of that as well. So reversal is a programmed thing, and it does everything that it needs to, and it's very powerful and very, very easy to use, just like all of Purge-it basically. We have a full audit history. I've actually already touched on audit, but it does give a full audit history. So we have a full audit and history of everything that was archived, who did it, when they did it, what the options were that they took when they did it. So we'll always be in full control of everything that's been done on the system. And quite importantly, each one of these modules, each one of these standard archiving modules, all perform all of this functionality within a single job. So when you're running processes, you're not running multiple steps. You're just running one job for each process, and we're gonna come on to that in a little bit more detail so you can understand the importance of that. So in relation to Purge-it, just to delve down a little bit deeper, once again, the main archiving routines are what we call a program solution. We're not a database level tool. So at no point will you be working in the database. At no point do you need to run SQL scripts. You don't need to understand how SQL works. You do not need to know table relationships. You do not need to be technical. All of our standard routines, all of that is built into them as a program, and you run the program and it does everything you need to. So you don't need to know table relationships, table names, column names, how the tables are related to each other, SQL, and you won't be required to be logging on to a database to perform any of the functions. If you're technical and you want to log onto the database because you have those skills and you want to see what's going on behind the scenes, then obviously that's an option for you if you want to do any checking there. But to actually use the software, you do not need to have any of those skills. The archive routines themselves are batch jobs. They're UBEs that run on your system. The nice thing about this is that they're well, apart from the fact they're very familiar, because if you're running batch jobs in JD Edwards for anything else, then you know setting them up is a case of setting up data selection, processing options, and these are exactly the same. So if you're setting up a sales order archiving job, you're going to set up processing options. You're not going to be talking tables and table relationships. You're going to be talking about things like, how do you want to validate to purchase orders? If you've got a sales order and it's a transfer order, do you want to check a purchase order before you archive? Those sort of functional questions, not technical. These batch jobs are built in such a way that one job does everything. So one job will select data, it will validate the data is eligible to be archived, it will archive that data, it will purge that data from the live tables, and if necessary, it will summarize the data. So for something like general ledger or inventory, it's going to be adding values to summary records, and it writes out an audit of what it's done. So it's one job, does all of that. It's not a multi-step process, and it does it at a document level. So for general ledger, for example, it will take a document, validate it, archive it, purge it, summarize it, and move on to the next document. Why is that important? It's important because if you stop the process halfway through, you don't have to worry about whether it's been summarized up to the point of which you've done it. You know that it's fully summarized up to that point. And even at the end of the process, you know that you don't have to run any other steps. So it's not a multi-step process. You don't have to run different jobs to select data, different jobs to validate, different jobs to purge, different jobs to archive, and a different job to summarize. It's just one job does everything for you. And being a batch job, being a UBE, it's very easy to automate. So we have a lot of our customers, bigger customers, especially with massive FO911s, have just put automated jobs on the scheduler, and it's just constantly monitoring and keeping control of their database. And they don't even have to worry about projects anymore. They've automated the whole process through using the JD Edwards scheduler because it's just a JD Edwards batch job. Another nice thing about this as well is being a program solution within JD Edwards, it's easy to retain the knowledge. It's the JD Edwards interface which makes it nice. At all times, you're never working outside of JD Edwards, so that you know that you're always going to be able to access the information and look at what's going on. So it's super easy to retain knowledge in this product, and you don't need to maybe get consultancy in each year to run the process. Finally, I've put on there that it's easy to run because we're going to see that in a minute, that it is very, very easy to run. Just going to move away from the main engines part of my now, away from the standard modules, and just talk about using the software in general. It's fair to say that originally when we developed the software, it was very much focused on the main archiving routines, but they've been established for quite some time now, in use at lots of client sites. So in the latter years, we've worked more to improve the experience. So we've focused around dashboards and workbenches, workbenches for configuration and dashboards for monitoring the activities. So now we'll see this when we look at the software, but we have a single screen that allows for reporting on purging and archiving activities. So from that single screen, we call it our session dashboard. You can see how much data has been archived by table. You can see runtimes. You can see user information. You can inquire on the audit data. You can submit reversals. You can cancel jobs that are currently running. Effectively, you've got one pane of glass that controls all of your archiving activities. And then we have another dashboard, which we call the environment dashboard, that allows you to review your environment stats like growth over time and things like that. So we'll see the session dashboard just in a minute when we actually come to look at some software. Last thing I want to talk about is accessing archive data. This is obviously quite important for a lot of people. One of the nice things about Purge-it as well is that we've developed some very easy ways to access the archive data. The way that we've done it is we've created some archive applications that are installed into your production environment, and they are designed so that they access archive data they access data in your archive database. So it means that you can inquire on archive data from production, and you don't need to maintain a separate archive environment, i.e. you don't need to log out of production and into a separate environment to review archive data. So just to see how that works, standard production environment, if you run an archiving process, it's going to move data from one database to another. So it's going to move data from business data prod to maybe something like archive data prod, however you've got it configured. And then because the software is installed into your JD Edwards production environment, when the software gets installed, we also install some archive applications. They sit in your production environment and they allow you to inquire on the archive data. So what you don't need to do is it means you don't need to log out of production and into your archive environment to be able to view the data. So it means your users don't have to log out if you've got a customer service inquiry, customer service user, and they want to look for a sales order that's been archived. They don't have to log out of production into another environment. They can just access the customer service archive inquiry to see those archive sales orders. It's fair to say, though, that some companies do want to have a separate archive environment. So we've sort of, because we have our archive applications, it doesn't mean that you can't have a separate archive environment built over this archive database if you want. That does create an extra overhead for people because obviously there's extra logins, extra security that needs to be around that. So, so obviously there's an overhead with that, but effectively, you can still have an archive environment. You can have a hybrid approach where you do use our archive applications and you use an archive environment as well for some users who may wish to require it. But most of our customers live in this scenario here. Some do go the full hog and have an archive environment, but you have the flexibility. That's the nice thing. You can choose the approach that you want to take. That's it for the slideshow. I'm just going to jump on and show you some software now. So hopefully that was quite a lot of ground I've covered there quite quickly, but hopefully you can see that in action. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to just change the screen that I'm sharing. Please bear with me for just 1 second. Screen one. There we go. Okay, so square. Bear with me. Screen one. Share. Okay, so hopefully you can see my JD Edwards logon screen now, although I've got to be honest, it's not really highlighting it properly, so I'm not convinced. Bear with me 1 second. So this is JD Edwards environment, one of our more recent one. This is a demonstration environment. My session's expired, bear with me 1 second. Just logging on to JD Edwards demo. And sorry about this. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I'm just going to, because I'm not getting any feedback. As I mentioned before, software is installed into JD Edwards. We can see here some menus. Okay, sorry. We can see here some menus. So when you install it, installs as an ASU, installs straight into your JD Edwards environment. We have some menus that come pre-configured with it, or you can choose to break these up and put them out to whoever you want to. As I said before, we have our partner reserved system codes as well, so it won't conflict with anything you have. So learning Purge-it or using Purge-it is just like using any other module, a new module within JD Edwards. It's about batch jobs, it's about processing options, it's about applications, it's about reports, that sort of thing. We can see here we have menu options here to go to each of our standard modules, and then we have an option at the bottom here to go to custom module, which has got quite a lot of functionality in it. We're just going to focus on the standard modules for this part of the demonstration, and I'm going to focus on sales. I'm just going to point out very quickly the environment I'm in here is just standard JD Edwards demonstration data, so it's just straight out of the JD Edwards book. That being said, the quality of the data is really poor, so you have to please accept some of the results might look a little bit unusual compared with the normal production environment. So I mentioned before about dashboards. So before we actually go into running any jobs or any applications, I'm just going to take this first option at the top here called our enhanced session dashboard. Now, this dashboard is the one place view of all of our archiving activities. We have a full history here, and anyone who has access to this application can see that full history. We're not necessarily looking at the individual data of what's been archived. We're just looking at everything around it, the audit, jobs, how long they took to run, the history. So this allows me to view anything. The most important thing about this is the grid up the top left-hand side here. It's what we call our session. It's the session dashboard, and this grid at the top here is a grid of sessions. So every time we run an archiving job on the system, it submits what we call an archiving session. So we can see here there's been 69 sessions, and each one of these rows on this grid is a different archiving job on the system. It's a different session. So without the reason I want to highlight that is because what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit an archiving job, and then I'm going to come back into this application to see how we analyze the results and see the sorts of things you can do with it while it's running. So I'm going to go into sales. So I'm going to go into my sales menu, the sales order, purge and archive routine. As I said, this is a batch job. It's a UVE. We got processing options that we need to configure. When we ship the software, we ship it with some default versions. We call Klik versions. I'm just going to pick up this test version here. Clearly, as with implementing any other module within JD Edwards, it's a case of creating the batch versions how you want them to be. If you've got different archiving for different companies, then you could set that up by having different batch versions for those different companies which had different rules. Generally, most of the time, you would do it across the board with the same type of rules across all companies, because that's from experience, that's the way things work best. So if I want to submit a batch job, I'm just going to highlight it and click OK. I can put data selection on, so I could data select by company, by document type, whatever I wanted for this particular job. I'm just going to leave this open. I'm not putting any data selection on it at all. And I'm going to hit submit. It's now taken me into processing options. I'm not going to dwell on any of these particularly. I'll just pick a couple of them as examples. First one I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that first one to a U for update. So you can run jobs in proof or update. If you run them in proof mode, you'll get all the same results. It just won't physically move any data. If I go to the selection tab, one of the things I should have said was whether you're running a sales job, a purchasing job, a general ledger job, they all have a similar look and feel. So they'll always have a general tab, a selection tab, a modular validation tab, a quick tag tab. I'm just going to explain a couple of things on here. but it's nice to know that once you're comfortable, if you can submit a sales order archiving job, then you can submit a purchasing one and you can submit GL. You've just got to be able to set the processing options up the way you want it, and they're business decisions. So at no point in this will you ever see me asking or showing you table relationships or things like that. So it's really one level above any sort of complexity from a technical perspective. So on the selections, we have to put a cut-off date for our archiving routine. So this has got the 31st of December 2020. Sorry about the date format. I'm actually based in the UK, so this is a UK-based UK-based date format. Obviously, it'd be the other way, 12/31/2020 for you guys. That would resolve to however your JD Edwards system is set up, though. But then the other thing we have on here is what we call date offsets. Now, these are really, really nice features. What they allow us to do is, rather than putting an actual date for our archiving routines, we can put in what we call a date offset. Now, a date offset is something that resolves at runtime and gives you a calculated date that's resolved based on the date of the day of the year that you're actually running it. So you create these own date offsets. These ones you see here are ones that we've just created ourselves. The software allows you to create your own date offsets, and you create the rules that apply to them. So if I look at this one down here, it's got three rolling 3 years demo. Currently, because it's the 18th of April 2023, if I use this date offset, it would currently resolve at runtime to the 18th of April 2020. If I have this, then tomorrow it will resolve to the 19th of April, the next day the 20th of April, and in a year's time it's going to resolve to 18th of April 2021. What's so great about that? Well, the nice thing is that it means that when you run these, if you use date offsets rather than actual dates, then it means that when you run them, you don't have to come back in and change the processing options. And the nice thing about this is it means that you can then put them on a scheduler. So these date offsets allow for the automation of your archiving activities by using dates that are resolved at runtime based on the data retention rules or policy that you've defined for your company. I'm not going to use a date offset for this. I'm just going to use an actual date. We have what we call modular validations. I'm not gonna dwell too much on these. I'm just gonna maybe pick one of them. We got one here, the second one, enter 1 to validate purchase orders, or a 2 to validate and check the status of a purchase order. So I'm processing sales orders here. If I'm doing something that might have a purchase order relationship, it might be a direct ship order, a transfer order, something like that, then by having this processing option switched on, that it's going to protect that validation rule, and it's going to check to purchasing before it decides to delete the sales order. If I don't want to do that check, I can quite simply turn it off by turning off this processing option. And finally, we have something on here called Quick Tag. This is another super neat piece of functionality because everyone has tag tables, especially around sales. And what Quick Tag allows you to do is there's another screen, I'm not going to go into it, that allows you just to type in a list of tables that are tag tables and the modular area they relate to. And then you type, that list is given a name, and you type that name in here, and those tables are processed at the same time as the module that you're running them for. So if you've got any sales tag tables, if you've got 3, 4, 5, 1, or however many, you type them into your list, you put the thing in here, the list name in here, and then it will process those at an order level at the same time it's doing all the other tables for that order. Nice thing about that is it pulls all the tag tables into the main process, and it takes about like 30 seconds to set up. So it's really super quick and super easy. So I'm just going to click OK on that, and now that it's submitted. So we've got an archive job running now on sales orders. So I'll come back to my session dashboard. This is the thing that monitors all the results. We can see it here. And if I look here at the top of my grid, I've just hit refresh, and we got this session number 70 sales update run, 5% progress complete. So we can see here that this job is running. I've clicked on the first row. And we're clicking on the first row. The rest of, I mentioned before that the rest of the dashboard then changes to show information relating to it. So what does a running job look like on this dashboard? It's really easy to see. If we come down here, we've got a tab display at the bottom. We've got the first tab is run status. It shows me the % complete. I'm deliberately not refreshing the screen because I'm pretty sure this job is already finished by now. It's showing me the data selected. So I've got 610 orders selected. I've got 73 orders processed, and I've got 537 remaining. It's showing me the actual start date and time, and it's showing me the expected finish date and time. So this is going to tell me when it thinks the job will be finished. So if the job's going to be finished later on tonight, and I know I've got backups kicking in later, it allows me to take corrective action around that, and we're going to come on to that in just a second. It gives me, I've got a status chart here. If I come into the analyze option, it gives me a list of the tables that are being processed by this job and the number of records being removed from each. I've got an exception analysis. It gives me a breakdown of all the exceptions that have so far been found, things like orders not at final activity status, purchase order exists or is at the wrong status. That's geared towards that validation, that processing option that I mentioned. So, and from here, the numbers of these orders, I can go down further into audit screens to actually interrogate them and actually see what these sales orders are that have this particular exception. So that if I want to, I can take some sort of remedial action against them. We have a log, have email notifications. I can set the jobs up so they email me when they start and when they finish. So I don't need to, if I've got jobs running over the weekend, I don't need to worry about logging onto the system to see if they finished. I'll just get an email saying they're done and give me some of the stats from them as well. I've got a performance tab, which is just about the effectiveness of the job. Top right up here, I've got another tab display. I'm quickly zipping through these, but things like process and options, data selection, these are the same sort of information you get on work submitted jobs, and we're snapshotting it here so that you've got a full history of everything that you've done. So if in the future you come back and you look at what's been done here, then you've got a full details of what's actually happened. I said before, this job is still running. If I hit refresh, we can see it's actually complete. If I had a job running and I wanted to cancel it, I've got a cancel option. I can see it up here. I just choose the row and I hit cancel. When I hit cancel, it gives me the ability to cancel immediately or put a date and time in at which I want to cancel it. So I can actually forward cancel an actively running job. Nice thing about that is that if I've got backups in the evening and my job's not going to finish before then, I can put a cancellation request in, and when it gets to that time, it's going to finish nicely before the backups, and then I can resubmit the job to finish the next day. So you've got full control of all these jobs from within this dashboard. Probably seen enough of the dashboard now. The last thing I'm going to quickly show you is access to archive data. So I know that when I run this job, typed in the wrong name. When I run this job here, that one of the sales orders, actually if I go back into the session dashboard here, okay, and go into audit and hit find. One of the sales orders that was archived in this job was sales order 2466. So I'm going to go into my standard customer service inquiry as if I'm a customer service user and look for order 2466. I'm going to hit find, and it can't find it because it's been archived. So as I mentioned before, we have our own archive application. So my customer service user does not have to log out of production and into the archive environment. They can just go to the customer service archive inquiry and say, I'm going to look for my order here, 2466, and hit find, and there's my order. And the look and feel of the screen is very similar. So you're not going to have big training for your end users for them to be able to access the archive data. This is just going to be, just tell them where the applications are on their menus and they'll have immediate access to that archive data. Bearing in mind that the data can be anywhere at once, it just needs to be visible to JD Edwards. So that's that. Access to archive data is super easy. And the last thing I said was that if I want to reverse stuff, that's easy as well. And I'm just going to prove that. I am going to come back to my audit data and just exit out of here. I've got a row exit. It's called Purge Reversal Update. I can submit this to run. I'm just clicking on that. and that's going to submit a batch job. Now, if I want to, I could put data selection on the batch job. I could data select by document number, by sales order number, and that will reverse just an individual sales order. There's also a way to do it through an application by selecting a sales order and just reversing an individual sales order that way. But the easiest way is to go through batch versions, submit your reversal job, and put data selection on for the sales order you want to reverse. If I come back to my session dashboard now and I go to my log, I will, and just refresh this, sorry, we now see that purge reversal started as complete. If I go to run status, my 21 purge sales orders are now 21 reverse sales orders. And if I go to the audit data, I'd see that that was actually also reversed. If I go to my customer service archive inquiry and hit refresh on this, the sales order's gone because it's no longer in my archive. And if I come back to my standard customer service inquiry and hit refresh, we will see that my sales order's back. So you can see how super easy it was to put that sales order back. So what we've done is we've gone through like an archiving process for sales orders. We've looked at some process functions. We submitted a job. We've seen how easy it is to access the archive data, and we've seen how easy it is to put it back. And at no point have I needed to log on to a database or run any SQL or be in any way technical. And that's one of the big plus points and strengths of the software. I am just going to come back to my PowerPoint presentation now, and just to wrap up, because I think we're pretty much done. And I'm going to just change my share. Okay, and so in terms of what we've done, we've looked at the software, we've run a process, we've archived some sales orders, we've looked at the access to archive, and then we've looked at how you look at the audit information and the monitoring the jobs, and then we've looked at the archive access, and then we've pushed stuff back to production by reversing it. So hopefully you can see how easy it is. I'll put this up here because it is a bit of a mission of ours now. We sort of come so sort of focused on this, improving the software through dashboards and workbenches. It's our intention is to make Purge-it the best and easiest archiving solution to implement for JD Edwards by continual evolution and improvement. So we are always looking at things that we can change, things that we can improve, things that we can add on to as well. And we've got some exciting new stuff coming out in the next release of the software. I already think it is the best and easiest archiving solution to implement for JD Edwards, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to sit on our laurels, and we can't continue to improve it and attract new customers. So that's it for presentation. I hope everyone's found that useful. So Brooke, I don't know if there's been any questions, but I think now's the time to ask them.
Yeah, there are, Terry. There are 3 questions I've got. And just a reminder, do you mind if I share my screen, Terry?
No, feel free.
Okay, great. So just as a reminder to everybody, there is still an opportunity to ask questions. So you can go ahead and pop your question in the Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll go into the questions we've got already. Thank you so much. Great information. And let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see that.
Awesome. Okay. So it says, does the system archive system 51 job cost? I'm particularly interested in archiving profit recognition information from closed projects. I'd like to close out a project and I'd like to close out a project at a time. Closing out all sub projects is kind of long. Do you want me to stop at any point? Or
no, okay, no. Was that the end of it, or?
No, not yet. It says, I'd like to close out a project at one project at a time, closing out all sub projects within that batch. So BU master, project parent, and BU children. And then also Carla said, awesome demo, much better than doing this via series of SQL queries with mandatory cross fingers prerequisite.
That's cool, thank you. Okay, on the job costing one, that's quite complex. We have job costing functionality in the validation. So when we're going through our standard modules, we have lots of checks to in the context of job costing before we remove data from those areas. We don't have a job costing specific module. I've got to be honest, it is something we're looking at, but also at the same time, it's something that we have implemented in the custom module for other customers. We've done one home builder implementation quite recently, and that was, whilst it's slightly different, it's sort of using the same job cost sort of type functionality. So it's an area that we're quite strong on in terms of knowledge, and it's something that we've done with a couple of customers. But in terms of the specifics on that question in the specific areas that they mentioned, it's almost like something that would be worth setting up a separate conversation for. But it can be done, and we have done it, but using the custom module. We don't have a job cost specific module, but it can be done using the custom module. And we've done Home Builder, which is sort of along similar lines, using the custom module. And we also, for that, we built some custom applications as well to support selection, marking up of communities to remove and things like that, just to make the process more user friendly. I hope that answers the question, but I think if any more information, I think I'd want to have a little bit more of an understanding specifically.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. The next question is from Saket. He says, does it work the same way with submitted reports? Does it archive the PDF/CSV?
Is the question, can you archive those items? I don't see why not, but I don't know if anyone's actually done it. Some of the work submitted job information, I know a couple of our customers have archived using the custom module. Some of the system tables they've archived using the custom module, but whether they've actually done the PDF type information and the CSV information, I don't know. I'd need to find that out.
Okay. The next one, it says from Tushar, does the archive data reside on the same production server?
That's completely flexible. So it can do if you want it to, or you can move it somewhere else. The only requirement is that the location of the archive data is accessible to JD Edwards. So it needs to be able to be configured as a database data source within JD Edwards. I don't know if that sounds technical. It's something that we do when we install and configure the software. So if, for example, someone wanted to build an archive environment over it, then in theory, if that's the case, then it is accessible to JD Edwards. So then we can archive to it. So some of our customers archive to the same database, just different schema. Some of ours go to different databases and some go to different servers. We've actually had some customers going to completely different geographical locations for their archive data. However, that can be a bit slow because of you're sending things across a very wide network then, or telephone line or something. I don't know how it's configured, but yeah. Providing the archive database is visible to JD Edwards and can be set up as a database data source, and therefore it's visible through something like Data Browser or something like that, then it can be used.
Awesome, thank you. The next question, we got a couple more. Are you good for that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Awesome. Yeah, so just so everybody knows, we are coming close to 1 o'clock. We're going to go a little bit over because I think that these are some really good questions, and I love to see it. So if that's okay with everyone, if you need to drop, of course, but I really appreciate you, Terry, for taking the time to answer these. So
that's good.
So Terry, the next question Next question is, do we need to implement any special setup over DB?
Nope, the minimum technical requirements are that of running your JD Edwards system. So because this is just another module within JD Edwards, there's no specific MTRs for it. The only thing you need to consider in terms of database is the size of the archive location. Obviously, you're going to be moving data from one place to another, so the size of that is the only thing you need to consider. But any minimum technical requirements or any other software, there's nothing required because everything is within the framework of JD Edwards. So if you can run JD Edwards on it, then it's fine for us.
Great. Next one is, how would one expand the capabilities of this system to include data on complementary software, example, quotation systems?
Okay. So I'd need to understand more about the complementary software. Is that something that's also installed into JD Edwards? If that other software is installed into JD Edwards, then it would be treated like custom tables, and so therefore you wouldn't need to do anything per se to expand to do it. You would just set things up in the custom module to target those tables. If that complementary software is outside of JD Edwards, then out of the box, this wouldn't work for those particular tables. You can do things like set things up as like foreign tables or define them within JD Edwards to give access to that table data from within this software, but that's a bit more technical then. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, great. And if there's any clarity needed, go ahead and just type a little response in the Q&A and we can definitely get any clarification. Great, thank you so much. Just a couple more. They keep coming in. The next one is, can you reverse and restore from archive by a batch, or can it only be done by individual accounts?
No. Okay, so by batch, I'm sort of assuming I've made an assumption now in my head that you're talking about AR, accounts receivable and accounts payable, and that can be reversed by batch for sales. So effectively, it's anything that's a component of the driver of the process. So for the sales orders, that would be a sales order number. For AR or AP, that would be a batch number. For general ledger, it would be a general ledger document. But I believe there's also batch is part of that component as well. So for general ledger, you could probably reverse by batch. It's not like an open format. You can't just reverse by anything at all. So it is slightly restricted. But for AR, AP, and I believe GL, I think you can reverse by batch. Well, certainly for AR and AP, because that's the driver for them, where they operate at a batch level, not at a document level, to ensure that batch integrity is always maintained.
Okay, great. Next one is, I have some customized tables. How will it be possible to include them into the standard archiving routines?
Okay, so if they are related to one of our standard modules, so your custom tables are like a tag table, an F554211, a tag on the sales orders, then it's really super quick and easy. You create what we call a quick tag group. You type in all the tag table names and the modules that they relate to, and then you add that quick tag group to a processing option value, and that's really quick. If your custom tables are nothing to do with our standard modules, and by standard modules, I mean sales orders, purchase orders, AR, AP, inventory, GL, that sort of thing. If there's something completely different, some customization that you've got, then you would set them up in the custom module. You create what we call a custom module schedule. You type the table names into the custom module schedule, and then for each table, you define the criteria of which you want to archive it against. And once you've created that schedule, when you submit the custom module job, you just tell it the schedule name, and it runs just like any other job on your JD Edwards system, purging and archiving. So once again, just like the standard modules that I showed you for sales, the custom module is also a single job that processes data at a transactional level. and does everything that it needs to. So you can still put that on the scheduler and things like that. So it would be using the custom module if it's not a specific tag table.
Awesome.
And for any, just a side note on that, if anyone wanted to see the custom module, obviously not today, we could set up, more than happy to set up a session for anyone to see that if they wanted to see how that works. Our standard modules are super easy to use because you don't need to be technical. But to be fair, if you're using the custom module, you've got to understand tables and relationships and data selection and things like that. So it's a little bit more technical. But you're still not working at a database level. You still don't need to understand SQL. It's more just sort of setting up data selection as you would on a batch version or something like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we have one more. And the last question is, could you elaborate a bit how a typical project looks like, timeline and effort?
Okay. Yeah. So we have a typical project plan that we share as a resource. But the project timeline. So for a typical size company, we would be looking. First thing to do is software installation and configuration. So we'd have one or two kickoff meetings where we discuss how it's going to be configured. We get the software installed into test and then configure it in test. And by configure, I mean the technical part. So it all works and archives to the right locations and setting up OCMs and stuff. And we do all that for you. And it probably takes about half a day per environment in total time to get it up and running. We do that in test, and then we schedule when we're going to do that in prod sometime in the future, because initially people obviously want to go through a round of testing. We then run training for end users, not end users, but people that are going to be using the software. That training is delivered via web sessions, but we like to use your environment for that so that you're training on like real data. So when we run a few little sample jobs, you'll see actual real results. And we take you through each of the modules and how to configure them and what the process and options are and that sort of thing. At that point, some companies choose to implement it themselves because it's so easy. And we just we provide a little bit of guidance maybe. Some people want us to do it because they just don't have the time. Effectively, there's two approaches. You can either go through running all of the modules in test and getting it for each time you run a module, sales, you get the sales team to say, yep, we're happy with this. When you run the finance modules, you get the finance team to log on to the test environment and say they're happy with it. And you can either run all the modules, and then when you're happy with that, you then install the software, configure it in production, and then you rerun that process in production. That's one way of doing it. We tend to favor more of a hybrid approach now, where we say, run the first module, sales, for example, in test. When your users are signed off and you're happy with that, then implement that module in production. And while you're running the sales order processing in production, you've then in test, you're moving on to purchasing. When you finish purchasing in test, move that to production, and then you, at the same time as running purchasing in production, then you move on to maybe inventory in test. So you got one and one. And it allows you to get through the process much quicker. Typically, because of the testing phase and agreeing with the business what the criteria is, I mean, the archiving routines for many business might take a few weeks to run. But the hold up more is getting the testing done in test and PY before moving the process onto production. Obviously, when you're in production, it's not necessarily going to take very long to get through those processes because you don't need to test them because you've already done that. So the process can vary in terms of run length depending on the size and volume of data and the amount of complexity around the testing that you're going to do. That all said, it's not rocket science. It's not like super difficult. It's just a case of following a process. And because the software is configured and built and designed such that it's not necessarily going to do anything wrong. So it's in that context, it is very, very easy. Yeah, I hope I've sort of answered that. I think I might have done, but I've waffled on a little bit. I'm sorry.
No, that was great, Terry. Thank you so much. It's good to kind of hear that experience for sure. So thank you. That is all the questions that I have. I just wanted to thank you guys all for the questions. Those were all great. And Terry, thank you so much for your presentation, the demo, and answering all of those questions today. That was great. And just as a follow-up too, you guys are going, I just put a link in the chat to enter to win a $25 Amazon gift card. And all that is a survey to let us know what your experience was like, so we can offer feedback and fine tune what we're offering. And so if you could do that, that would be great. And that'll put you in the drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. And anyone that attended has the entire webcast has the opportunity to win. So there are 11 of you left. So again, thank you so much, Terry. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to close out?
No, just basically just thank you, Brooke and GSI for organising, and I hope the content was suitable. And if anyone's got any questions, obviously pass them on to Brooke or contact ourselves directly. More than happy to spend any extra time talking to people.
Yeah, great. Well, go ahead and send a follow-up email with the recording. And again, thank you guys so much. And thank you, Terry. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks, Brooke. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.